Okay, ready? Camera rolling.
When I was 5, I got a budgie for Christmas. My big sister named him Couscous and I taught him how to say hello Polly, which wasn't either of our names, but hey, I was 5. Now, Couscous was my best friend and I taught him everything. I used to dream about him saying, "Hello Polly," almost every night. And although he got out and flew away after a few months, the dreams lingered for a long time. A few years later, my big sister got a kitty and I insisted she be called Quinoa. Mum and Dad convinced me no one would know how to pronounce that, so we just settled on polenta instead. I didn't like the name because I don't like the grain, but Mum reminded me that she was Sal's cat and not mine, and that I had no right to throw a tantrum, despite the fact that Sal had named Couscous Couscous. Polenta was gorgeous, but very vocal. You know, if she wasn't meowing because she was hungry, which was usually at 4 AM when she was outside my bedroom door, then she was purring like it was a competitive sport. She disappeared for a week once, and I swore on Santa Claus she came home at night because I could hear her meowing, but it turns out that she'd been trapped in a garage down the street and then I got smacked for fibbing. When I was 10, I read The Horse Whisperer and fell in love with the romantic notion of talking to animals. I would sit with Polenta for like an hour at a time, just telepathically telling her all about my friends at primary school while she meowed incessantly. Dad told me if I was going to stare at the damn cat, then I could feed the damn cat. I tried to feed her Polenta, but she didn't care for it. The Davidsons moved in the year 2000 and brought 2 dogs with them, a Yappa and a Barker. I developed an appreciation for the law this year because Dad said he'd cave their heads in with a shovel if it wasn't illegal. Shortly after they moved in, I discovered I was an animal whisperer. I could hear what they were thinking from within about 50 metres. When they weren't making an actual racket, Rex and Zippo would fill my head. I'd hear a ruff, ruff and ah, ah every morning when Mr. Davidson was getting ready for work. I complained about their noise and Mum just said I had the hearing of a hawk. I'm not quite sure she got her simile right. You know, when a 12-year-old discovers that they have psychic powers, they don't want to tell their family, but they want to tell someone. I told a friend who demanded proof. So I headed around to their house after soccer practice to meet the family angelfish. I stared at it. It stared back with its beady eyes and fishy mouth. Nothing, I said. I don't think it has a brain. But I can hear a possum outside. My friend asked, "What's it saying?" I don't know. It doesn't speak English. I don't really know what means. Naturally, they didn't believe me. Why would they? Why would anyone believe someone who claims to hear animal noises in their head? And how can I prove that a chicken once told me that year? It became increasingly difficult to concentrate. Whenever I made a connection with any animal, its voice would come to me as soon as I was near it. And my walk to school was beginning to sound like feeding time at the zoo. Dozens of birds, cats, dogs and other animals were just chattering away in my head. You know, an iPod on full blast was about the only thing that helped. Even that only helped so much. Imagine walking to school listening to this. Oh, Danny, pretty boy, the pipes are meowing from glen to hen and down the mountain. was about 15 when I proved it and got in the local paper. Someone's puppy had got itself lost and I heard it in the drain. Well, no one really believed me, but the family had wasted enough money on an animal psychic and they were desperate enough to bother the fire brigade with the rantings of an insane adolescent, as my dad was kind enough to put it. I became a local living legend after that, and my elderly neighbour, Mrs. Wilkshire Smith, offered me $50 to find out why her beloved Tabby wasn't coming in at night. So I sat down next to Tabby and petted her. She told me, which made very little sense to someone who isn't a cat. But I translated it for Mrs. W.S. She stays inside all day because she's afraid of the neighbourhood children. You should buy them all video games and then they'll spend more time indoors. Oddly enough, this worked perfectly and all my friends got copies of Halo. Well, after that, people just started throwing money at me left, right and centre to fix their animals' problems. Now, a pro jockey offered me $400 to find out why his horse had been so uncooperative over the last few months. So Mum drove me round to his place and I locked gazes with Princess and Frank. She looked at me with these deep, brown, enormous evil eyes. She said, I didn't like Princess Anne Frank one bit. Send her to the glue factory, I said without breaking eye contact. This one's racing days are over. It will haunt me till the day I die that they actually did it. I was 15, I didn't know there'd be consequences for condemning a horse that looked at me funny. It must have been the guilt they could sense in me or some weird sixth sense thingy, but all of a sudden animals hated me. Birds swooped me wherever I went. My life was a non-stop symphony of barking dogs. Cats would yowl and scratch me and ants always seemed to crawl into my shoes and bite my ankles. I tried to play the horse whisperer and now my head was filled with screams. Screams of rage and hate and disgust. It was hell. I couldn't sleep for a month. I tried to keep it together but I couldn't get along with anyone anymore and my mum ended up taking me out of school. She took me to the doctors. The ones near the vets. Animals' voices were just filling my head. Roosters. Guinea pigs. Snakes. It was intolerable. I tore piles and piles of medical records off the shelves, screaming and covering my ears to drown out the sounds. These animals were going to kill me for what I did to Princess Anne Frank. I murdered her. They were going to avenge her. I was going to die. I had to get the hell out of there fast. I ran full bolt for the door. Ah. They didn't institutionalise me, but the doctor had read about me in the paper and more or less had the neuroleptics on standby. I'm much better after the whole episode. I don't really hear the voices of nearby creatures anymore. Not when I'm awake, at least. You know, I don't think I'm the schizophrenic they're treating me as. The drugs just affect certain neural pathways and it's just coincidence they shut out the whispering. Well, how did I find that puppy in the drain? Unexpected. explain why I got like 20 times the national bee sting average last June. Either way, I'm happy my head's free from anything else's thoughts. There's enough going on in my human brain. One sec. Hello? Yes, it is. Your parakeet's depressed and you want me to talk to it? Yeah, I can do that. It'll cost you $200. Okay. Right, I'm on my way. Sorry, I gotta go.